Morning, everyone. Morning, Dave Seeger. Morning, Sandra. Morning, Lanrick. I think Cheryl's there too.
Good morning.
How's everyone doing? Happy Monday. We'll just give it a few minutes while everyone has a chance to get in.
Sure. I'm pretty sure the words happy and Monday don't go together, but
I'm trying, Dave. I'm trying. Or my children said, 9 days until the holidays, which is making them very happy.
Not that they're counting.
No, oh, no. I think they brought it down to seconds, but sure, yeah. Mm-hmm. Some would say that looking at economic data on a Monday morning is a horrifying thing. Susie and I happen to get excited about it, though.
I believe there's medication for that.
Well, possibly. Or a joy of economics. So just for housekeeping purposes, what we would ask is if you would stay muted during the presentation. The chat box is open. So if anyone wants to put chats in, by all means do that. If you need to raise your hand, please do that. And if all else fails, unmute yourself and just catch our attention. We're all pretty good with Zoom at this point, although I've already had 2 meetings this morning where I muted myself and forgot to unmute myself. So I'm not sure more practice is making me better. So while we're waiting for others to come in, how do you feel about doing a quick round the group just to kind of introduce ourselves? Really nothing too long, but just to kind of say, hi, I'm from wherever you're from, and possibly even why you're interested in this data. And I'm looking down my list, and Dave, you are the first person that I see, so I will hand it to you.
Sure. I'm Dave Seeger from Enterprise Canada, long time supporter of the Downtown Yonge BIA. We're a member. We also help the BIA with public relations, government relations, and other assorted support.
Thanks, Dave. Lanrick, you're next in my video line gallery.
All sorts of good. Good morning, everyone. My name is Lanrick Bennett Jr. I'm the new executive director for a non-for-profit called the Laneway Project. I'm here just gathering information. We do work with a couple of BIAs throughout the city, and knowing how important the Downtown Yonge BIA is to the city, we're definitely excited to see what potentials may come. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Welcome. Julian.
The unmuted Julian. Hello, I'm Julian Sleeth, General Manager of Yonge Dundas Square. Delighted to see you all this morning.
Welcome. Sandra.
Hi, everyone. My name is Sandra Gudeva. I'm a Leadership Associate here at the Cadillac Fairview. I'm currently completing a rotation here at the Eaton Center, and I'm really interested in this data just to help better understand our own traffic patterns and sales revenues. So really appreciate being here. Thank you.
Awesome. Welcome. Cheryl, I can see you in the list, but I can't see you. Oh, so Cheryl doesn't have a mic, so she's put a note in the chat, which I will quickly read. Cheryl looks after the public realm portfolio, events and street operations, and I think she can hear us and she can see us, but she can't speak. Melanie.
I'm the operations manager with the Junction BIA. We're just trying to learn as much as we can of what other BIAs are doing and the type of data that they are collecting. So that's why I'm here. Thank you.
Welcome. Brandon, are you here?
Yep, I'm here.
Would you like to just introduce yourself?
I work on the events team at the Downtown Yonge BIA. And it's always exciting to hear the updates from the neighborhood, for sure.
Welcome. Have I missed anybody? It's always that terrifying moment when you're looking at the gallery and you're not sure if you can see everyone or not. I think I've got everybody so far. Susie, do you want me to get going? 10:35. Should we crack on?
Yes, go ahead, Pauline.
All right. So welcome everybody. If anyone else comes in, we'll let them in as they arrive. Thank you so much for being here. We try and do twice a year an update on urban economic data that looks at the state of the neighborhood. This is spearheaded by my colleague who's below me on my video screen, Susie Barbosa-Pizzirusso, who I will be handing over to now. And thank you again for joining us and welcome. Susie, over to you.
Thank you all. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. We are so excited to have the latest installation of the Downtown Yonge Economic Update. This is for Q4 of 2022. And just another note before we begin, we are recording this session and we will be posting it on YouTube and sharing the link with everyone once the sessions are over, so you can rewatch if you so wish. I know we will probably rewatch it. I'm not sure if everyone else is as interested in this data as we are, but it will be there for you to rewatch if you had any thoughts or you wanted to kind of share with other people. So we will go ahead and start. First, we'll look at the agenda for today. We've got some really exciting data to share with you all, some new data that we really hope you find as interesting as we do. So we'll start off first with a quick Canadian economic outlook. We figured it would be a good place to start to kind of level set to see how the Canadian economy is looking before we sort of dive into the neighborhood specific data. Next, we'll look into a new data set that we just purchased this year, which is a neighborhood spend analysis specifically for the Downtown Yonge BIA area. After that, we'll look at some key findings from other companion research projects. So this will include the office occupancy index that we've been getting from the SRRA, which is the Strategic Research Regional Alliance. And this has been updated semi-monthly since May of 2020 to November 2022. So we can really see the patterns of the office occupancy index over the pandemic. The retail mix study we've been doing as well since last year. This is specifically the update for October 2022, and this will be for the Downtown Yonge neighborhood as well. And next, we will look at the pedestrian flow analysis, and this will look at July to November of 2019 through to 2022 to kind of see those changes as the pandemic progresses and as early recovery begins. The last piece, we'll be looking at a quick follow-up handout to attendees. Specifically, this will be the economic newsletter, which we published the first iteration of it in the spring of this year. So we now have a follow-up piece, which is essentially just a summary of this presentation and about a couple of upcoming data updates you can look forward to in 2023. Just a note, in case any of you attended our sessions in the spring, we did previously have visitor and resident mobility analysis data. This data is currently on hold at the moment due to some supplier delays. We do expect this to be available early next year, so we should have it for the next iteration of this presentation, but for this one, we don't have it at the moment. So as we mentioned, we'll start off with a quick summary of the Canadian economic outlook. This specific information came from the Bank of Canada Monetary Policy Report, which was published at the end of October of this year. So what they've sort of summarized as the key points to look forward to in the coming years is that while inflation in Canada has declined from its peak, which is sort of largely due to the lower gas prices, it is still too high and underlying inflationary pressures remain elevated. The Canadian economy continues to operate with significant excess demand across all sectors, and businesses are facing widespread labor shortages and continuing tight labor markets. However, the pace of the economic growth in Canada is slowing slightly and is expected to moderate further. Growth is projected to essentially stall later this year and through the first half of 2023, which should reduce demand in the economy, and this would allow supply to catch up and hopefully bring inflation down. Now, the growth in the GDP, or the gross domestic product, is projected to decline from about 3.25% in 2022 to just under 1% in 2023, and then increasing slightly, reaching 2% in 2024. And inflation is expected to ease to around 3% in late 2023 as the economy responds to the higher interest rates and as the effects of increased commodity prices and supply disruptions fade, and hopefully returning to 2% by the end of 2024. So of course, there's a whole report that we will include as a source at the end of this presentation if you want to learn more about this. We figured it would be a good sort of level set before we dive into the rest of the data. Here are also some national consumer spending patterns. This is specifically from Moneris. They published this data in September of this year. And this chart specifically is looking at the average transaction size specifically for apparel that people spend using their debit or credit cards on Moneris payment portals. So you'll see here at the bottom axis, you've got the year, so 2019, 2020, 2020, 2021, and 2022. And then on the top left axis, you've got the average transaction size. So you'll see there is a lot of fluctuation in apparel, and this is very typical and normal for apparel as it fluctuates due to the seasons. Typically, it increases in the spring, decreases in the summer, increases again in the fall and winter with back to school and the holidays, and then decreasing again in January. However, if you look here, beginning in January of 2021, which we've noted here as the yellow arrows, that little trough there, you can see that the troughs never actually decreased to the levels that they were in 2019 and 2020, which is actually a very encouraging sign. And you can see here in mid-2020, which is the orange arrow there in the middle of the chart, that's sort of the lowest point of the average transaction size for the year of 2020. The average transaction size was sitting around $90. And if you notice the average transaction size for the midpoint of 2021, which is that green arrow sort of on the right-hand side of your chart, that one is closer to actually $100. And then for 2022, that gray arrow, which is sort of the lowest point as well, is just above $100. So we really are seeing an increase in the spending patterns of apparel as sort of time has gone on and people are starting to go back to work, back to the office, back to their regular activities. We're seeing that spending increasing. Now, again, this is the same chart. However, this is for restaurants looking at average transaction size. So this again does fluctuate, of course, with a seasonality over time. And the average transaction size for restaurants has been steadily increasing, which is definitely encouraging signs after, of course, the last few years of the hardships. If you look at the left-hand side of the chart, where the right-hand side of the chart, where the orange arrow is, that is the current average transaction size as of September of this year, of 2022, and it is sitting at around $25 per transaction. And of course, this is on an upward trend. What's interesting to note, though, is this yellow arrow on the left-hand side. That is actually the highest point of the average transaction size for 2019, which is during the holiday season. And that peaked at $25 per transaction during the holidays. So we're really expecting to see the peak for this year to be significantly higher than that, as we had already reached $25 by September. And of course, encouraging signs as we head into the holiday season. This is some new data again from Moneris. They just published this in December of this year. This is Black Friday participation across the country. They've compared it to the same day 1 week prior, so the Friday before Black Friday and the 2021 event. So you'll see here on this chart, you've got the provinces across the bottom side of the chart, and then on the left-hand side is the percentage volume change. The blue bar is in comparison to Black Friday of 2021, and the orange bar is comparing to the Friday prior to Black Friday. And when you look at this, it's very interesting. Ontario is sort of in the middle of the chart there on your screen. Ontario saw the highest volume change when compared to the week prior, which is that orange bar there, and it's sitting at just above 15%. And the volume gains were about 3% when compared to Black Friday 2021. Now, these are smaller numbers than I think most people would have anticipated. However, given the inflationary pressures and prices increasing, this is actually very encouraging signs, especially given that the holidays are coming up soon. So now we'll go into some new data that we just got, the neighborhood spend analysis. This is data we've just started getting this year. This is specifically from Moneris, and it is only looking at transactions made on Moneris payment terminals through debit or credit between January 2022 and August 2022. Now, of course, this does not account for any cash transactions or transactions made on non-Moneris payment terminals. However, it does give us a good indicator of trends, where things are headed, how much people are approximately spending, and it's sort of a good indicator of sort of what's going on in the neighborhood. Moneris estimates that approximately 40% of transactions across Canada are made on Moneris payment terminals. So that just kind of gives you an idea of how many transactions we are approximately gathering here. And we've split up the data into 3 different sectors. So you'll see here at the bottom, retail accounts for apparel, household, department stores, and other retail. Services includes professional services, drugstores, health, financial, and other services. And the last sector is food service, which includes both restaurant and grocery. So here we have sort of, we're going to start with the summary overall across all sectors, and then we'll go into the sector specific data. So here we are looking at the total number of transactions in the Downtown Yonge neighborhood by sector between January and August of this year. So you'll see there at the bottom of the chart, you've got each sector split out there. You've got services, food service, and retail. On the left-hand axis, you have the count, because we are counting the number of transactions. And then each bar sort of indicates the different months. And then the lighter months is sort of January, February, March, April, May, and June are sort of in the middle there, and July and August are closer to the end. You'll see here that significant gains were made across pretty much all the sectors when looking at the number of transactions made. Those services did see a dip beginning in February, you'll note there on the left-hand side. This could be due to the shifts in spending once sort of COVID restrictions were lifted, vaccination efforts increased during that time, and sectors and sort of the state of emergency had ended in May in Toronto. So this could account for that sort of slight dip there. However, services did see some gains in August, peaking at around 50,000 transactions in the Downtown Yonge neighborhood between January and August. For the food service sector, some incredible gains. You can see here 160% increase from January when comparing August to January, peaking at just above 350,000 transactions between those first eight months. And retail also made some significant gains, of course, as things were sort of recovery was beginning. People were going back to the office. People were spending more in retail. We saw a 300% increase in August when compared to January, and this peaked at just above 150,000 transactions between those first 8 months of the year. Now we'll look at the top postal codes by dollar spend. This was some of my favorite data to play with. It was really interesting to see where people were coming from and who was spending where. So we'll go through this list here. These are the top 11 postal codes that spent the most amount of money in our area. And these top 11 postal codes accounted for just over 25% of the total money spent in Downtown Yonge between January and August of this year. So we'll just go through them quickly here. So M5G was the top postal code by dollar spend. And this is the area around University to Bay and College to Queen. And they spent 6% of the total neighborhood spend. M5B is the neighborhood around Yonge to Jarvis and Carleton to Queen, and this was sitting at around 5%. M4Y and M7A both sat around 3% of the total neighborhood spend, and these are the areas around Church Wellesley and Bay Cloverhill. M5H and M5T both spent around 2% of the total neighborhood spend, and these two are the financial district and in and around Kensington Market. And then the final 4 all spent around 1% of the total neighborhood spend. And these are the areas around St. Lawrence Market, the Annex, Rosedale North, and the Fashion District, which is the neighborhood around Fort York. Now, we figured it would be good to sort of visualize and contextualize those top 4 postal codes, just so you can kind of get a better understanding of that neighborhood. So here's a map with those top 4 postal codes mapped out. So you can really see that the ones that sort of came the most to the neighborhood are really sort of that downtown core, our residents, sort of the people within a 5, 10, 15-minute walk of the neighborhood. Now, these top 4 postal codes of the total amount of money spent by those 11 postal codes that we just saw, these 4 make up 65% of that spend. So it really is kind of a big chunk just from these 4 postal codes alone. Now, when we look at the average transaction size, this is where the data kind of gets a bit interesting, because when we look at the top postal codes by sort of the amount of money, the top spending per transaction, these are actually most of the time across all sectors, neighborhoods from outside of Toronto. So you'll see here the top postal code by average transaction size across all sectors for those first 8 months of the year is E3V, sitting at just over $300 per transaction. And this is actually a postal code located in New Brunswick. The only one that's sort of the outlier here is the second one here. You'll see it's M5N is Forest Hill. That is the second highest postal code by average transaction size, sitting at just above $150 per transaction. The next one is P0R, and this is an area near Sault Ste. Marie, Ontario. And this one's sitting just under $150 per transaction. And the final 2 as well are sitting at just under $150 per transaction. And that's E4V, which is located in New Brunswick, and G3Z, which is located in Quebec. So a really interesting sort of comparison when you look at sort of the people who are spending the most, which is the average transaction size, versus the people who are coming the most often, which is the number of transactions. And we'll see that play out throughout all of the sectors as we go into that data now. So we'll first start off with the retail data specifically. Here again, when we look at the top postal codes, this is by transactions per card. So here we're really trying to understand who's coming back the most often, who's coming regularly, doing their regular shopping in the neighborhood. No surprise here, M5B is the top postal code by transactions per card, and they're averaging around 22 transactions per card. M5G and M2K are sort of pretty close on that chart there, sitting at around 21 transactions per card. And the final 2 there, M5H and M1H, are both sitting in around 20 transactions per card. So really not a big discrepancy between these top 5 postal codes. However, they're all located within the downtown area, really kind of showing that they're the ones that are coming back most often. Now, on the flip side, when we look at the top postal codes by average transaction size, again, that same story occurs with which we saw in the sector all sector data. The top postal codes are not located in Toronto. They are sort of located outside of the neighborhood here. E3V is the highest postal code by average transaction size for retail, sitting at just above $300 per transaction. And this is in New Brunswick. N4L is the second highest, which is just under $300 per transaction. And this is actually in Meaford near Owen Sound, Ontario. The third highest is N7M, which is located in Chatham, which is closer to Windsor, Ontario. And this is just, they're sitting at just above $250 per transaction. And the final 2 are sitting just under $250 a transaction. And this is A2A and V8G, which are both located in Windsor, Ontario. And then the last one is in British Columbia. So again, that same story here of those who are spending the most per transaction are sort of the people who are coming from out of town, maybe doing some are going on vacation or business travel, whereas the ones that are coming most often are really the ones sort of that are located in the downtown core. When we look at the same data for services, again, that same story applies here. So top postal code by transactions per card for services, M5B is again the highest one. This one, you'll see that the transaction count is actually higher, sitting at just over 70 transactions per card compared to the approximately 22 transactions per card for retail. So we can see that these postal codes are actually coming back more often for services. M4Y is the second highest, sitting at 70. And then M5G is the third highest, just under 70 transactions per card. And the final two are sitting just around the same level. M7A and M4W are all both sort of in the 60 transactions per card range. Now, when we look at the top postal codes for average transaction size for services, this is where, again, that same story applies. All of these postal codes are not located in Toronto. They're sort of outside of the city, except for that one outlier there, Forest Hill. You'll see there on the right-hand side in that chart. What's interesting to note here for the average transaction size for services is you'll see the dollar spend is actually significantly higher here. So you'll see that the top postal code of N2Z, which is near Godric, Ontario, their average transaction size is around $1,400. Now, just to note that the services includes all services. So this is banking, legal fees, sort of a little bit of everything. So that's probably why we're seeing this increase in spend in services, because it sort of runs the gamut of what services are sort of included here. So M5N, which is that Forest Hill postal code you'll see there, is the second highest spending at just above $1,200 per transaction. K8P, which is actually near Belleville, Ontario, that one is just below $1,200 per transaction. And then the last two there are both sitting in and around $1,000 per transaction. And those two are N4N, which is near Port Elgin, Ontario. And then L2W, which is near St. Catharines, Ontario. And then the last sector we'll look at here is food service. Again, a similar story you'll see here. You see there's a pattern here. It feels a bit repetitive, but it does sort of solidify the fact that those downtown postal codes really are the ones that are coming back the most often. So here again, M5B is the top postal code by transactions per card for food service in the first 8 months of the year, sitting at just above 35 transactions per card. M5G is just below that in second, which is just below 35 transactions per card. And then the last three are all sitting at below 30 transactions per card, and that's M4Y, L7L, and M9MN. Sorry, not M. And then again, when we look at the top postal codes by average transaction size for food service, sort of the same story. I feel like I'm repeating myself, but it really does kind of solidify this, that E4W is that highest spending postal code for food service, and that's again New Brunswick, sitting at just above $140 per transaction size. P0R, which we saw earlier, is near Sault Ste. Marie, Ontario, sitting at again just above $140. G3Z, which is in Quebec, sitting at basically $140 flat. And then the last two, G1A, which is in Quebec, and V4M, which is in British Columbia, are sitting at around $120 and around $90 per transaction for food service, respectively. So of course, this is a lot of data. So we figured we would do a quick summary of just this portion, just so that you can get a better sense as to sort of what we said throughout all of this. So a quick summary for the neighborhood-wide data. We saw that as the state of emergency ended in early spring of 2022, we saw spending increase in retail and food service and dip slightly in the services sector. However, it did make some gains throughout the months and into August of this year. The top postal codes that return most often across all sectors are all located within the downtown core of Toronto, and M5G and M5B were the top postal codes across all sectors by transaction count. So this is really solidifying that idea that if you're looking for customers that will return most often, those downtown core postal codes will probably be your best bet. However, when we look at average transaction size across all sectors, those top postal codes were really all located outside of Toronto, with the exception of that one located in Forest Hill. So if you're looking for those customers that will spend the most per transaction, but may not come the most often, those might be the ones that you want to target. The highest average transaction size came from New Brunswick at around $313, and those top 11 postal codes accounted for about 26% of the total neighborhood spend in downtown Yonge between January and August of this year. Now, just a quick summary for those sector-specific data, just those key highlights here for retail. Similar thing, M5B and M5G were those top postal codes in terms of frequency, and they averaged around 20 transactions per card. When looking at the average transaction size, E3V in New Brunswick and N4L were those top two postal codes, spending in and around $300 per transaction. Then for services, we have M5B and M4Y, which are the top postal codes there in terms of frequency, and they averaged around just above 70 transactions per card. And the top postal codes by average transaction size were N2Z, which are near Godric, and M5N, which was in Forest Hill, spending on average just above $1,300 per transaction. And the last one there, food service, similarly to retail, M5B and M5G were their top postal codes when looking at frequency, though they had higher levels of transactions per card, sitting at just above 30 transactions per card, respectively. And their top postal codes by average transaction size were E4W, which was near New Brunswick, and P0R, which is near Sault Ste. Marie, both spending just above $140 to $150 per transaction. So that's the data that we've got from Moneris in terms of neighborhood spend. Next, we'll go into the key findings from our companion research projects. So here is the office occupancy index, which we've been sort of receiving from the SRA since pretty much May of 2020. So you'll see here, this chart sort of maps out the office occupancy, and this is specifically for the downtown core, so all of Toronto, downtown Toronto, not specifically downtown Yonge. And you really see that growth happening sort of in February, March of 2022, and it sort of peaks up. We are sitting currently at a 36% office occupancy as of November 1st of 2022. And just from that particular report, according to the SRA, who they published these, the data is beginning to show a slow and measured return to work in the office. Anecdotally, they are seeing companies who have a higher rate of in-office work claiming a productivity and competitive advantage. They're seeing that Mondays and Fridays are the lowest attendance days of the week. And Wednesdays and Thursdays, attendance in some sectors are actually crowding around 60%. And they're seeing this as a sign that employees are valuing more work time in the office. Now, when we look at the retail mix study, this is specifically for downtown Yonge. We collect this to better understand the state of street front retail, just retail in general in the neighborhood, our vacancy rate. This data was collected including all consumer-facing businesses within the boundaries of the Downtown Yonge BIA. And this included both businesses located along Yonge Street and on all of the side streets. However, most of the businesses were located on the street level, but we did include both lower level businesses and upper level businesses. And this data was collected in October of 2022. So just a quick summary for this one here. Here you'll see the split of the retail mix by number of stores in downtown Yonge. As of October 2022, we've seen slight improvements in retail vacancy when compared to the previous assessment, which we did in June of 2022. While the total vacancy stands currently at 12.1%, which you can see there on the chart, this is a 1.5% increase or decrease, sorry, from June, so an improvement there. We are seeing over 20 redevelopments ongoing or under review in downtown Yonge. So this does sort of touch a little bit on that vacancy rate, but it does signify strong growth in the years to come. And you'll see here in this chart that food services is still the largest sector in downtown Yonge, which is currently representing just under 33% of the total retail in downtown Yonge. Now you'll note that I mentioned the number of redevelopments that are ongoing in the neighborhood. We figured we'd include here our downtown Yonge development map, which we just updated in November of this year. We will be sending this to you in the follow-up email because it is very hard to see and there's so much information that we really want you to sort of look at, but we figured it would be good to include it here just to give you a sense of what's to come and what's sort of happening in the area, and really that there is a lot of change going on. So you'll see in this map here that the yellow ones are ongoing redevelopments or developments under review, and those blue ones are the ones that are completed. So there's really a lot of change happening in the neighborhood, a lot of growth that we're kind of excited to see as the years go by. Now, when we look at the traffic flow analysis, this is coming from our traffic counters, which we've had in the neighborhood since the early 2000s or mid 2000s, I think. 2008, I believe, is when we first got them. This data is collected by Springboard using electronic counters along Yonge Street. We have a total of 12 counters located at all the major intersections on Yonge Street. And specifically, the data that we'll look at today is the total pedestrian traffic between July and November of 2019 through 2022. And we'll also show you the Thanksgiving long weekend data for pedestrians, also comparing 2019 through to 2022. This is some very exciting data. We're seeing such great increases here in pedestrian flow. So you'll see here at the bottom, you'll see July, August, September, October, November. On the left-hand axis, you'll see the count. And the blue bars are 2019 data, the orange is 2020, the gray is 2021, and the yellow is 2022. So you'll see here that across all 5 months, we're seeing increases of just over 40% when compared to 2021, which is fantastic to see, especially during the summer season. However, what I do want to point out is that yellow bar under October. You'll see that it's actually higher than the 2019 level. And this was actually the first time we've seen our pedestrian counting data higher in this year than pre-COVID or pre-pandemic numbers in 2019. So we were really excited to see that. And again, some significant gains there in November as well, peaking at just under 5 million pedestrians just in November alone. So we're really seeing some encouraging signs in pedestrian flows sort of coming back. And this is even still with the office occupancy still sitting at around 36%. So we're really excited to see this. We hope that the businesses have been seeing these increases and have been benefiting from them as well. And then a similar story here when we looked at the Thanksgiving long weekend. So we looked at Friday to Monday for the pedestrian flows. You'll see again the same thing. The blue bar is 2019, the orange is 2020, the gray is 2021, and the yellow is 2022. We again saw these levels reaching higher levels than in 2019. We saw a 17% increase in 2022 when we compared it to 2019, sitting at just above 500,000 pedestrians just for those 4 days alone. So really excited about this. We're really excited to see how the holiday season shapes up and hopefully seeing even more increases than this in December and January. So that's sort of the bulk of it for the data that we're presenting to you today. We really hope you found this helpful. As I mentioned earlier, we do have an updated economic newsletter for Q4 of this year, which we will be sending out to all attendees. And this will just give you a summary of basically all of this data just in a nice little 2-3 page report. So we'll share that with you, and it'll also go up on our website once these presentations are done. So if you lose it or you don't remember where it gets sent out, you can find it on our website after this week. And then just a quick data update for you all. We will be getting the September to December 2022 Moneris neighborhood spend data in early 2023. So that will be really exciting to see how the holiday season shapes up, how back to school happens. And we'll be able to present that to you early next year as well. The office occupancy index from SRRA, we will continue to receive that semi-monthly until the end of this year. And again, as I mentioned, the Environics data on resident and visitor analysis, the mobility data that we usually get, we have had it delayed due to supplier issues, but we do expect that to be rectified in the next coming months. And so we should have that data for you in the spring economic update. And of course, as we mentioned, we will be offering these presentations for you in 2023. Thank you so much for having us today. I really hope you enjoyed this data. Please let us know if you have any questions, feedback, any thoughts, anything that sort of jumped at you and thought, oh my goodness, like I didn't know that, or I don't know, please, we'd love to hear your thoughts on this data if you found it helpful. And yeah, just any conversation about data we're always excited about, so.
Thank you, Susie. Anyone have any questions? We do very intentionally try to keep these briefings, pretty short and to the point so that they don't take up too much time, but we are more than happy to stay and answer questions if anyone has anything specific. Or Susie's email is on the screen. So if you'd like to shoot off an email or put something in the chat, by all means, feel free to do that. Yeah. Any questions? I will take that as a very good sign. Thank you everyone for being here. Thank you, Susie, for a lot of excellent work. Really appreciate it. And yeah, I hope you guys have fantastic holidays, have a good break, and we will see you in the new year.
Thank you, everyone. Please let us know if you have any questions or feedback at all.